the cooperating teachers, we should not mention about doing a research or writing a research report, but we should adopt like the process of action research. And yes.
Okay, the lovely thing about the Kasesa, that's right, university, is that they are all asking the same question. It is a group of 6 people who can form a we question, because I believe that you are all the university supervisors. So you're all asking that question about how can we improve the school university partnership. Now that is like a participatory action research, because the we question can be genuinely asked. Now each individual has got their own I question within that collaborative or cooperative inquiry, participating in the we question. So that was what was exciting for me in talking over with you about your shared inquiry. And it could be in 6 months to 12 months, you will have a research report, an evidence-based research report that IPSD might be able to post into an archive to show how you're working together to improve your school-university partnership. Now that is what I'm hoping will come out of this workshop. I'm hoping that your different universities and institutes and the IPST will actually build an archive of the evidence-based action research reports that we can all share, see what you're learning, but also see what we can learn from each other. And what you can do internationally is to bring something you take for granted and make sure that you're bringing it into your research. What you will take for granted and you will ignore are the qualities of relationship that you have established within Thai culture to work collaboratively so that you're all helping each other. That was a delightful moment when I could see you all pleased with your colleague. And he must have been feeling very, we say, affirmed just to have you present, celebrating his success as he outlined what he was wanting to do. If you will video some of your conversations together, you can point other researchers to this quality that you've already established. And it will be significant in different parts of the world, because we have not managed to create what you naturally move towards, which is the cooperation, the working together, with a quality of relationship. For example, as you've moved in with your 2 colleagues here, they were wanting to help an individual on her own so that you could actually work together. Please do not ignore how important that is in your relationships and your research. I hope I'm being understood there, because it is such an important quality to bring into your research. And IPST, I think, could do a huge service to research, not just in Thailand, but around the world, by building archives with the new technology. I'll show you now how we've managed some of this, but nothing like the quality that you've established in your groups already in these presentations to AERA. So I'll now just show you, I've mentioned the work of Jackie Long, especially in creating a culture of inquiry within a very large board within Canada. When Jackie was a superintendent of schools with responsibility for a family of 16 schools with principals and the continuing professional development of the teachers. Now what I want to do is just show you how to access the papers that we presented 4 weeks ago in San Francisco, which all focused on a culture of inquiry. You will see poverty in the title. The poverty refers to something that you and I have talked about, which is academic journals at the moment have a poverty in the way they are emitting this energy and the flow of values that the visual can communicate. I imagine that you're seeing, and when I look at some of the videotapes of me, I've suddenly become conscious of the camera here as I talk with you, because it will be from this data that I will be able to see whether I'm doing what I think I'm doing. In terms of my enthusiasm and my passion and the values I hold, am I expressing and bringing that energy into the room with you? As you, when you came out here, everybody was communicating, you know, it's your first time, and your whole way of being communicated that pleasure and the energy, even though you were nervous. When you came up, the same thing. You know, there was a genuine laughter in the room with you. You know, that people were with you, they were supporting, and that was a delight to see. But without the visual, you will not be able to communicate those important values. And that's why it's so important. So in our paper for AERA, the poverty refers to the lack of the multimedia forms of representation in the academic journals, especially within the American Education Research Association, which is the most influential in the world. There was a conference with between 10 and 12,000 people at this one educational research conference in San Francisco. But the major publications of AERA are all text-based. So I will now just show you how to access the multimedia and the use of the digital technology, which I'm saying IPST could lead the way in Thailand in terms of the research reports. They're already doing a lot in terms of the use of technology in classrooms, but there's nothing at the moment to focus on the importance of this in research in the classrooms or the school-university partnerships. So I'll just quickly go through, and I'll do it quite quickly just to bring you to the multimedia points that you could integrate within your papers. Could I ask, has anybody just tried what I said about YouTube? Has anybody just tried to make a little video clip and put it on YouTube yet? Nobody yet? Yes, that's great. And it might be, if we speak, I could bring it up, you know, just to show how easy it is. But maybe after lunch we could just have a look at that. Okay, now if you go again into the actionresearch.net, let's just see, I think we're still connected. Let's just have a look. Yeah, now there's my website. This will be up for the 2012-13 academic year. So I'll have this like this until July. Anything produced in 2013 will still be there for the 13-14 practitioner researcher group. And I'll show you how you can join, if you wish, this international practitioner researcher e-list, where you could share your ideas, and you will have people all over the world that would respond to you if you wish. But I'll show you first of all how to access the paper by Jacqueline DeLong, Elizabeth Campbell and myself with Kathy Griffith. Now, how are we creating cultures of inquiry with self-study that transcend constraints of poverty? Now, remember that the poverty is to do with the use of the digital and multimedia media in academic journals. We're saying that at the moment there is a poverty around the form of expression. Now, if you click on that and go into the paper, I'll just quickly browse down it. It's not for you to read, I just want to show you something. You've got in it the video clips that we've integrated from YouTube. And what I want to show you is that if you get on YouTube, the application that allows you to bring into your papers the shared conversations. Now imagine that if there was something from Kasasat University, also from the other universities in the room, suppose 4 or 5 of you wanted to have a conversation. You can record this on YouTube, because we can get the I don't know how many yet have tried this, but what impresses me is you can get easily 4 or 5 people recording. I'll show you those 3 of us. That's Jackie DeLong on the left, myself in the middle, Elizabeth Campbell on the right, and the other person I'll show you is Kathy Griffith. And you can integrate these within your papers as part of the ongoing conversation. And you can bring it in as evidence of the changes that are taking place over time. So when you ask me the question about integrating the data, this is how you can do it. Now, just going down, again, I'm trying just to focus on the poetry that you can integrate. Now, you can integrate poetry that means something to you. I talked a little bit about life-affirming energy. Now, you all know how important, whatever religion, whatever spiritual beliefs you have, that sense of the certainty of one's own death is actually quite important in making meaning of life. Now, within a Buddhist culture, I believe that you have got a particular view of the next life. So if you lead a particular life in this life, it influences the next life. My own humanistic belief does not have that. And mine is, I live in this life and then that is it. So I have a spiritual, if you like, interest in living as pleasurably as I can and as productively as I can in this life. So that idea of life-affirming energy is very important. Now, a teacher I worked with, called Sally Cartwright, she died recently of cancer. She had brain cancer, 2 tumours, and she suddenly got to know about this when she was doing her master's dissertation. She was only in her early 50s, and she died quite quickly. Now, Sally was one of the most gifted educators I'd ever seen, and I've got lots of video clips, and I'm working with colleagues to build up a story of Sally's life in the classroom. And this was just a poem that was read out at her funeral that actually captured some of Sally's values. And then, or you can be full of the love you shared. So it's lovely. Your heart can be empty because you can't see her, or you can be full of the love you share. And if you look at the or, it's or you can be happy for tomorrow because of yesterday. Or you can cherish her memory and let it live on. Or you can do what she'd want, smile, open your eyes, love, and go on. Now, those are the values that you can bring into your action research accounts. But you could use the poetic. You're not just limited to prose, because poetry, drama, dance, all the creative arts can help you to express your meanings. And I'll show you where Miss Campbell, who actually is an artist as well, although she wouldn't accept herself as an artist, was communicating. There is where the 4 of us are engaged in a conversation, and it shows again, we claim that this video clips, we're affirming that we're pooling our expressions of life-affirming energy. So as you express the pleasure of your communication, if we'd had a video, I believe that that would have communicated a flow of life-affirming energy between you all that actually comes into your educational research, which you need to show in your reports, because it's very important education. Now, this is how we integrated the visual and the digital technology within our research reports. There is the poetry, there is also the humour, because I noticed in the last session you were louder than you've ever been. Your conversations, there was laughter, and it was this notion of the humour that you were expressing which is also important. Because without humour, really, life isn't worthwhile. So don't hesitate to include the importance of humour. Again, that was just an illustration of where we were actually expressing that humour within a video clip together, which we're all saying is important to our research, and we mustn't miss it in relation to our classrooms. Again, you've got the action reflection cycle coming into it. We're all using the action reflection cycles. We've also got, in relation to all of these video clips, something about our embodied meaning. I'll just actually flip down. You've got dialogues, so transcribed data from your conversations, that source of data that is integrated in here. Now, this was Liz Campbell, and she was actually communicating the vitality, even though she'd been quite distressed. She brought in the problems of this return to the classroom was and still is extremely challenging. It's exemplified in a spiritual crisis which continues to be exclusively ignored because of economic rationalism. That point that everything comes down to an economic value, a money value, and is tending to ignore the importance of the spiritual values, which I think we all know are very important in our education and our teaching. So I just wanted, as I said, we can just flip down there, and you've got different kinds of evidence. There it is, data, transcribed data from the conversations. There's also evidence from the validation groups within this particular presentation. Then we make sure that we've actually explained the scholarly significance of the research. And this is something I hope that you will all bring in, because you can relate it to the most advanced social theory of the day to explain why your account and research report is worthy of being placed in these international arenas. So the scholarly significance should be really focused on, and again, we did this towards the end of our point where we brought in some of the key researchers. Donald Shern, you may have heard of him. He created this notion of the reflective practitioner. He was very influential. Just before he died, I think he died in 1996, but certainly in 95 he was calling for the development of a new epistemology through action research. He wanted to develop a new way of knowing, and he said that it would come from action research. And I agreed with that, and that's why I've worked very hard to create this new form of knowledge based on the digital technology. But you'll be able to, as I say, just flick through this at your leisure. You'll see the integration of the visual, the action reflection cycles, the poetry, the creative arts, and you could add to those in terms of your own research report. But I just wanted you to make sure that you knew how to access that into the actionresearch.net, then into this point here, how are we creating cultures of inquiry? And the other paper, which is here, actually does contain more of Kathy Griffith, showing how she's created questioning and that culture of inquiry within her classrooms, which for all your cooperating teachers might be helpful, because it shows how to produce a research report, an action research report, that focuses on inquiry learning within classrooms. Remember that you've got in the first paper an international researcher, that is myself, working with the tutor, that is you as university supervisors working with your cooperating teachers. So Jacqueline actually built her doctoral study through her work creating a culture of inquiry. I was her supervisor, and I was researching my own practice in helping Jackie to create a culture of inquiry and her doctorate. Jackie is now supervising the master's students, and Kathy and Liz got their master's degrees with Jackie as a supervisor. They're now working with their students in school, their pupils, to create inquiry learning, and we brought evidence from the classrooms to AERA 4 weeks ago. So you've got an illustration there of a cooperation in inquiry. But it's collaborative. We didn't yet manage to get to the we question, which you've already got to here. But nevertheless, you'll see us cooperating in the inquiry with each individual contribution, but with that question as the main topic. So I hope you'll all experiment now with these multimedia and digital forms of representation. Without them, you will not be able to communicate that delightful energy that you both have within the group. Now, the last thing I want to show you before lunch is this, that there are what we call e-lists. Some of you will be already on that. There are things like Facebook. Any members of Facebook, for example? Do you use Facebook? Yes. Some of you, yes. Try to upload something from YouTube. You know, we'll have a look after lunch and just see what you've done. And you know that it is not difficult. Once you've done that, you can integrate easily the visual into your accounts. But if you want to join an international practitioner researcher group, all you need to do is go into the What's New section of my webpage. You actually just browse down and you'll come to these details of the practitioner researcher seminar. And here you'll have the archives. So you can click on the archives, you can access those. But to join or leave the group, all you need to do, here are the archives. You'll see how long it's been going. I started it in February 2004. There is a whole series of archives, which some of them, there is a flurry of activity. We get a lot of postings in terms of a particular inquiry, and then we might have nothing for some weeks. So that would be the archive. You can actually join or leave the e-seminar by clicking on that particular section, and it says you can actually subscribe or unsubscribe. It says there, I am currently subscribed. So it says from this screen you can update your subscription. So I am subscribed, but all you've got when you do it is it will ask for your name and your email. If you will then submit it with this form, you don't have to bother with these. It comes up, you just want a regular one, it's normal, and you just put subscribe. This on yours will be subscribe. You click on that. As the leader of the list, it comes to me, I then activate your membership. And I usually just introduce people to the other members. And it would be nice to be able to say, you've joined the list, you're from your particular university or IPSD or your institute, and you've been in a workshop on action research in Thailand, and you're now developing your action research and hope to share it with the group. But that just gives you something that you could, an additional forum, if you wanted to use it, which would help you, I think, practice your English, because the language of that particular group is English. There are people all over the world. The latest one is from Colombia. You'll see that the ability to practice your English and share your accounts can be done on that list, the practitioner researcher list. Now, before lunch, could I just pause, because I've shown you what I wanted to show in terms of the Jackie DeLong being the person, the superintendent, the focus on a culture of inquiry. And I'm saying everybody in the room will need to really focus on creating a culture of inquiry within your classrooms, with your cooperating teacher, within your university, because whilst you've got this great strength in cooperating at the moment and the quality of relationship between you, I would say there is a weakness in relation to passive learning. That there's something in the way Thai culture has focused on seniority, so that even within the room, you're still a bit nervous. I think most of you have now got over that in being able to come here, talk to the room, and actually ignore the professor, because I'm much more interested in your knowledge than communicating my own, and I think you're feeling that you can actually just speak to the group and feel part of the group. Now, that is changing, we say, the pedagogical climate. It's changing the educational space. So it really focuses on your inquiries. And I love your two questions about the action research, getting a curriculum for the partnership, school-university partnership, but also getting your action, the curriculum for the action research for the students to develop their action research. And if you feel that there is still resources that you would like me to put before you or questions that you want me to answer, as I say, after lunch, please do come for our final sessions so that we've covered as much as we can. And I hope that you and I can just get together to access the YouTube clip you put up so that everybody can see how easy it is. Can I see anybody else? Yes?
If we have time, I'd like you to just show me like the paper that already accepted in referee journals.
Sure.
Using this kind of research.
Yeah.
Right now we do not have the clear picture about how to write such research report.
I'll do that with pleasure. I've got several in the Educational Journal of Living Theories. I'll point you to the text-based referee journals. So those don't yet accept the multimedia, but I'll show you the journals. One is called Action Research, another is called Educational Action Research, and I'll show you the papers that a colleague of mine at Liverpool Hope, John Walton, who actually, for IPSD, I sent you all today Joan's poster for the colloquium in July, which is doing what I was suggesting IPCT might like to do in terms of getting together another workshop or encouraging people to present. So I'll show you Joan's references that she's got accepted in referee journals, all on a living theory approach to action research. Yeah?
If you have time, please give us an example of the findings, how to present the research findings in action research.
Yeah?
And the way to analyze the data, because
Yeah.
I see the evidence, but how should we merge the theme or just tell a story what we do?
Those are really good questions, and we were talking a little bit about this in terms of using a template. So those are really good questions. So after dinner, we must look at, I'll show you, for example, you saw that with Marie Huxtable. Marie was on the video. I'll show you her contribution where she followed the action reflection cycle. Now, when you start, and it was her first master's unit before she went on to her PhD, and she got her PhD, I'm suggesting that first time you do an action research report, you might like to follow the action reflection cycle as your template. And I'll show you one or two examples, okay? But then, as you get more confident, you should be encouraged to move away from the template and actually create your own narrative. This is really important. Every one of those documents has moved away from the template. It is still a living theory thesis, it's still an action research with an explanation, but each form is unique. That every person has generated their own form of narrative, their own form of story. But they started by following a template. But they didn't allow themselves to get stuck in the template. It just got them going. The action reflection cycle. We'll look at ones where they've analysed their data, they've analysed some video, some have actually analysed the transcripts to actually help with that process. And if there's anything else, as you're talking over dinner, over lunch, please bring it into the session, because it's our last chance in the 5 days of the workshop to cover what you want to cover. Okay? Oh, yeah, right. Thanks. Good. I know some people have got to arrive, but I'd just like to start and just show you something. that came out of today. And I want to encourage you to post. When I say post, I'm meaning to keep your websites, the Spanglefish websites, up to date. So most of you have got your action planners up there. You've got some indication of the cultural influences on you. And today we've been working on the kind of action research projects that you can undertake in your different universities or within the Institute for the Promotion of Science and Technology. So I did urge you to keep those up to date so other people can access them, and it keeps a record of where you are with your action research. And I'd just like to show you this from Rajabat Maha Sarakam University group, who aren't here at the moment, but I liked very much what they said about the two curricula they're working on, the curriculum of action research for partnership, the curriculum of action research for students. And what they've done is to go through and put down their curriculum objectives, and they're going to provide a practical plan by integrating action research. They're going to actually have an understanding on doing an action research seminar. They're going to do that with the utility of action research, sharing the resource with a partnership mission. And then in the second part of it, we've got the action research, the curriculum, the action research for the student, to encourage the student to take the action research in the classroom, again, to enhance knowledge and practice on action research. So I'm going to encourage the group to post this in relation to their website so that we can all keep that record of what we're doing with our action research. And I hope you will all make sure that you're actually posting. Just keep your documents, make sure they're on the web, hopefully within your website, so that we can all just keep in contact with what each other is doing. Now, I was asked before lunch if I would spend some time looking up the writing up of your action research reports, and also this idea of the analysis of the data. So if I just spend a few minutes showing how to do these things, and then I'll check with you if there's anything else you want me to cover. And then please forgive me with names, because is it Chitawal? Yeah. No, it's okay. We are going to look at how to put your video onto YouTube, because you've already done that, and I want everybody to see literally how easy the process is. Okay, and then I'll make sure by the end of the afternoon, if you like, you have that time just to get up to date your record of where you've got to, so you can actually have that bit of time to post onto the internet if you need it. But first of all, let me just go to the nature of the writing up of your action research report. And I'd like you to access, again, my website, because the examples of the report are there. Now, you can all, and have been accessing that. I've explained to you a lot of the master educators' writings is where the reports are of the writing up of the action research. And the one that I would like you all to access as an example of the use of the action reflection cycles is one by Marie Huxtable. So you just keep going down to see if you can see Marie Huxtable's inquiry. Okay, so there it is. You'll find it under the section on educational inquiry accounts. So if you go into the master's unit, there into the master educator's writings, go down to the education inquiry accounts, and then within that section you can access the one by Marie Huxtable, which shows how to write up, if you like, your first action research report. The first report you produce, I suggest you follow a template, because it gives confidence that you can move from that template into your own unique narratives following on from your first action research report. Now, this is Marie writing in the context of a conversation which she wants to use the documentation because she's putting it to the examiners at the university, and she wants to know, can I demonstrate I've met the criteria with originality and insight? Can my peers in the action research group appraise in my account? Can you see evidence of my values as lived through my practice? So Marie is using the data as she analyses it to answer that question of living her values in her practice. And she's asking you, the reader, to see if you can see the emergence of her living theory and the standards of judgment she is using. Again, it says, fellow educators, does my language and my writing engage you and connect with your own learning journeys in ways you find useful? In relation to myself, can I see what I'm saying in a way that helps me progress my thinking and practice? So like all good action research accounts, it shows your learning. When we said you can't impose your view on your lover, it's not a case of you changing someone else. You might influence them, but you can actually show how you are changing yourself in relation to your learning. So just bear these in mind, and as I say, these are freely available for you to download, use in any way you like. But I want to show you something that uses the action research account. And some of you were interested in the idea of gifts and talents. Marie was responsible for supporting gifted and talented education within the what we call local authority. I think it's rather like your province. So you'll be able to see Marie using, and this is the action reflection cycle that those 6-year-olds used in their classrooms, that she is using herself in her master's writing. So I gave you one form of action reflection cycle. Do you remember, what is it you want to improve? What are you going to do? Act and gather data, evaluate and modify. Now, this is a similar action reflection cycle you can use in writing up your account. And this is known as the task wheel. It comes from this woman, Belle Wallace, and it means thinking actively in a social context. Now, I'll just turn this camera on just for this section. The questions that I'm being asked to respond to. I think these are so fundamental. The issue about writing up your action research report, and then that analysis of the data. And the two are integrated. You have to analyze your data in your action research report so that it becomes evidence. You're going to gather a lot of data. The information you gather will be the data. How do you analyze that so it becomes evidence in your action research report, which is an evidence-based action research report to justify the claims you make? Now, in this task wheel, thinking actively in a social context, I want now to make sure that you see how your first report can follow a template. It gives people confidence to know that they're actually being systematic. I would say they're being scientific as well, not through a controlled experimental design, but through the use of the validation groups to criticize and improve the quality of the data and evidence. Now, here you have an action reflection cycle. Just see if you can see within the task wheel the action reflection cycle, because this account that I'm going to now show you follows this template for writing up your account. You can actually write, what do I know about it? What's the task? In other words, what do I want to improve? What's the task? How many ideas can I think of? In other words, imagine what you're going to do, choose an action plan. That is what this section, how many ideas can I think of? Which one is the best one? Because you're going to choose an action plan. You can only choose one to act on at a time. And then it is, let's do it. So, let's act. And as you're acting, you ask yourself, how well did I do? You try and evaluate with some data you've collected how well you've done. And then this idea, for it to be research, you've got to share it in public. Research, this idea that a man called Lawrence Stenhouse in the UK said, look, research is systematic inquiry that you make public. In this case, the action reflection cycle is systematic. You have a concern, you imagine, you act, you evaluate. And that is a systematic form of inquiry. You make it public in writing it up and sharing it, and then you have this explanation, what have I learned? So you explain in your evidence-based account what you have learned in this process, and then you continue if it still needs improvement. So there you have the template. And this is what I'm saying you can actually use if you go to this account. There you have the gather and organize. I'll just show you the headings so you get the idea. What is the task? In other words, what am I going to improve? You generate ideas and you select one to act on. You implement, you act on it. You then evaluate whether you're being successful, and then you communicate and you learn and show what you've learned from the experience. Now, this account also draws on the ideas of others. So you've got here a subheading, what have I learnt about myself? And then you've got evidence that you've engaged with the ideas of others in what you reference in your text. So always remember that if you're going to be judged for your scholarship in action research, you really do need to engage critically and creatively with the ideas of others. And you'll see throughout this action reflection cycle, through the narrative, that there are ideas of others brought into the explanation of learning, including the action reflection cycle. Now, I'd just like to check at the moment that as a template, which can be just helpful for your first action reflections and first report, is clear. Is that okay when you ask about, okay, that writing? Now, I just want to stress something before I go on to this idea of the data analysis. I want to encourage you, just for your first action reflection writing, to follow the template. You know, you can either do it, that action reflection cycle I gave you earlier. I like very much Bell Wallace's thinking actively in a social context, what we call the task wheel, that you'll see in this report. And I'm encouraging you, just for your first report, to use that template to give you confidence that you've got the action reflection cycle. You understand what it is to do action research and produce an evidence-based explanation. But then, I want to encourage you to move away from the template, to have confidence that you can create your own stories, your own explanations, using your own form of representation and structure. Now, if you do this first one, so you get the confidence, and then you can go to any of the other action researchers in either the doctorates or the masters, and you will see that the people have actually started to experiment with their own form of narrative. They've still got a lot of evidence in, they still use the ideas of others, but they've moved away from just a strict application of the template. Because just to use that as a method can get in the way of your creativity. Any student that is just following your method or a plan is not doing something original with their own unique story. So you can encourage people to use this action research and action reflection cycle, but at the same time encourage people to experiment as they move on to create their own narrative in their own way. And you can see a number of these. I'll just show you how you can access. But I'd like you all to start with this one about how can I improve my practice. And again, what I like about this type of that through walking the talk. In England, we have a saying, is the academic or is the researcher walking their own talk? And what we mean by that is that often academics can talk about teaching, But if you ask them to teach, they're not so good. Okay, so they can talk about it, they can give you a lot of theory about it, but if you ask them to go in a classroom and actually teach the more difficult students, they've got a real problem with it. Now here, this idea of walking your own talk is, if I'm talking about mixed ability groups, as I did when I first went to Bath, I went into classrooms and demonstrated that I knew what I was talking about by doing it. Now that is walking your talk. And this is what this title means. And the dealing with doorsteps, that is a metaphor for difficulties. That what happens is that we have these constraints. It's like yours with your culture, the passive culture. This, at the moment, is a doorstep, it's a block. And you're trying to move to the culture of inquiry. So what I like about this relevance to you is that it's about an individual walking her own talk. In other words, doing what I think you all want to do, which is get into the practice and not just talk about it, but to show you can do it. So that, I'm hoping, will be helpful to you in terms of all of you accessing this one, in terms of the MA inquiry, how can I improve my practice through walking the talk, okay, and dealing with doorsteps. So just make sure that you all know how to access that into my actionresearch.net website, into the Master Educator's writings, go down to the educational inquiries, go. Okay? See it? There you are. Immediately comes up, and you've got the whole lot as a template, and you can share this piece with your cooperating teachers, with your colleagues, to show how they can follow that template to conduct their first action research writing. Now, in terms of the analysis of the data, here is one way in which the data has been analysed. That everything I think you can do with teachers in their classrooms is from a concern to improve the learning with the pupils. Every teacher that I've worked with, when I've actually talked about the way they've tried to improve what they're doing, they intuitively understand what I say when I tell them, I think that you have actually already worked at improving the learning of your students because you're not living some of your values as fully as you want to do. That some of the pupils are not learning as much as you think they can learn. And what I think you're doing is you're imagining almost daily what you need to do to help this person or this class improve their learning. And as you're imagining, you decide how to act with this student or this group to improve their learning, then you try it out. And that next day, you actually work out whether you've managed to do what it is you say you're going to do. Now, and when I say that everybody that I meet recognizes that pattern intuitively, I'm meaning that they've never made it explicit. They've never made it researchable. As soon as I explain and explore with them that action reflection form, there isn't one person that hasn't recognized that that is what they are doing in their daily practice. The difference is that I'm encouraging them to make it public, and as they do that, their learning improves. It evolves. They share it with others. You think of this room and how much you've benefited from sharing the ideas of others. If you don't make it public, you can't do that. So here is one way in which you can analyze the data in the action reflection form. That this data has been analyzed in relation to what do I already know about this problem, what is the task I've set myself, how many ideas can I think of, which is the best idea, let's do it, How well did I do? Let's tell someone, what have I learned? So in terms of this analysis of data, the data has actually been analysed in relation to those categories as a cycle. Am I making sense here? Because it gives you your written form, so it explains how you can write up your account, but it also gives you the categories you can use for your analysis. That you would start your analysis by explaining, if you like, what's the task? What are you trying to improve? And you would encourage from your data, from your conversations with colleagues, from your written documentation, to actually use that as the data. You would show that you understand what the task is. Within the conversations, within your writing, you would actually find out how many ideas have you had. You'll be able to point to your suggestions. Everybody in this room has shown their imaginative capacity. You've shown your creativity with the ideas about what it is that you could do. Do you remember, as we were talking, you were coming out with ideas, lots of them. So there you've got the data, which when you write your report, it comes in the analysis that is actually the ideas you've thought on, you've got which is the best idea, you've chosen one to act on, and you've all given me the ideas that you're going to act on. I love the curriculum. You know, the two curriculums I showed you at the start of this session about the partnerships and the student, and then what the group at that university is going to do to create these two curriculums. So that is already their action plan. They've already said, right, we're going to do it. Nobody at the moment has got to the point of being able to answer, how well did you do it? Because you're going to go back and try your ideas. You'll get data on this, how well did you do? The analysis is looking at your data and answering that question from your data, how well did I do? So the data analysis focuses on that question, how well did you do? And then you'd move it into about producing your report, the explanation of your learning, test it with a validation group, who will help you to strengthen the meaning, its comprehensibility. You remember those 4 points? Well, the second one was the evidence. Can you strengthen the evidence to show you've justified the claims you're making? The third one was quite difficult. Are you showing, as you did in a very excellent analysis of government policy? So you had the government policy, you had the ministry, the university, and then the department, and then what you were doing in classrooms. So when you're actually coming to here, let's tell someone, you can integrate within your action research report as part of the analysis that you're actually engaging with government policy, ministry policy, the university policy, as part of your analysis. That your data will show if you're connecting with the policy from your government and the ministry and the university. And then, final thing, what have you learned? You're going to explain in your action research report, the evidence-based report, which is in that form to start with, what you've actually learned, and so you can explain it. Now, that gives you how to analyse. You've got how to write it, you've got the illustration there of how to do it. But it also contains the criteria or principles for your analysis. Those categories in this wheel here, you can actually put them into that form, look at your data, draw the evidence from your data to show how you're actually responding to these points. Now, could I check? Do you know, it takes me, I'm serious, it takes me, I think, about 2 months of working with master's students to get to this point, where we are sharing some of the data, we're beginning to look at the writing, and we're helping each other to strengthen the validity of the explanations. So don't think that because at the end of 5 days, you know, we haven't got to that point, that you are slow. You are not slow. You're asking those fundamental questions. And all I'm saying is it would take me, with my students, at least 8 weeks to get to the point of having a valid explanation of their learning. So could I just check before we go on to this idea of using YouTube, using the video, is there anything else? Have I covered those 2 points? You asked me if I look at the written, how to write, so you've got that account, you know how to access it, it's got a very clear template, and I know we talked about a template earlier this morning, and this one I think is a very good one, very clear one. Sorry?
So may I change my understanding? This is view of the cycle.
Yeah.
So when we analyze data, it's actually means that each step.
Yeah.
Because analysis of the data related to each step. But I'm wondering that when we do the action research, we have many cycles.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Not many. I think you'd find over a year, if you were to do 3 cycles, that would be quite a lot. Over 1 year, over 12 months. If you manage to get your first report, and the draft, validation, redraft, and then one that is actually publishable, say over 12 months, that would be very rapid.
So imagine if we have three cycles,
Yeah.
for example. So how can we, gather all data in each cycle together and import?
This one that was put in for the masters had gone through 3 cycles. That to get to this point, that it could be submitted for a master's degree, and then, as I say, the person went on to do her doctorate, which she finished, and she was awarded it last year, and which she go through about 5 or 6 different cycles. And the documentation shows the growth from one cycle to another. So you don't worry, and you certainly don't omit previous drafts. In traditional research, you can just get rid of previous drafts. In action research, you keep them all because it's evidence of your learning, that you'll be able to see clearly that your 3rd report has within it really important developments from your 1st report. And it goes beyond reasonable doubt that this learning has occurred. Now, in my own doctorate, I actually analysed reports, I think it was something over 20 years. And the first reports that I produced were nothing like the depth of the sophistication of the papers that I was producing 20 years later. And I documented the cycles I'd gone through in relation to my own learning. And I think you can all start, and don't worry about how rough your first writings feel. In action research, it's really excellent. And this will sound strange to you, but it's good to have literally weak reports. And they're genuine. This is where you are at the moment. Because you will show over several months that your writings, your inquiries have deepened and extended, and you've got the evidence of what you were doing, say, 3 months ago, what you're doing now, what you're doing in 3 months' time, is part of an evolving and a learning process. But if you follow that action reflection cycle, I think it will just give you that confidence initially that you can actually carry out the action research. It's rigorous. You can see that other people in international communities are actually following it and learning from it before you go on to what a number of the doctorates have done, which have all moved away from, if you like, the application of the cycle. It's still within their account, but they've often used their own form of, we say, representation. They've developed their own unique story of their lives, which is rigorous and it's valid, but it doesn't just apply the action reflection cycle. But do come back to me, because as I say, I want to give you some time this afternoon just to make sure that you've got the writing actually either ready to post on your website or you've sent it to me, so that we've got this documentation of where you are at the moment. And then we can come back to it and we can see where you've moved on to in 2 or 3 months' time. Now, again, could I just pause there before we go on to the importance of the video and just seeing if you can see how you can post these videos. because the visual, I think, is going to become very important for you as you start to use the technology in your research. As IPSD actually provides some support, not just to use it in classrooms, but to use it in your research, so that you can actually bring some of the qualities that you have in the Thai culture. And I've said just how much I've seen your ability to cooperate, the quality of your relationships, I think should come into your action research account, especially as you're developing your partnerships with the schools, the university, and hopefully then with IPST. But is there anything else before I just ask the demonstration of the YouTube with the video? Now, can I just ask once again, because we were talking, weren't we, over lunch? Do come forward. And you were saying that you thought that many other people in the room might have used the YouTube with the video, but hadn't put their hands up. So, could I just see how many of you have used and put clips onto YouTube? Can I see? One. Still one. No, so it doesn't look as if the problem in it, does it? Okay, so okay then, just to show us. That's great. Come on. Yes.